Monty, how are you doing today?
Hello, I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thanks. Very, very well. Thank you so much for being on. It's a pleasure speaking with you. I came across you on LinkedIn, and I thought you'll be an interesting person to speak with. I find that I'm doing a lot of my prospecting on LinkedIn these days. LinkedIn just seems to be my go-to platform. I initially thought it would be Twitter, but it seems to be LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is working all good. So yes, you came up in the algorithm, and I checked out your profile, and I thought, oh, you'll be a perfect person to speak with on the podcast. So thank you so much for being on.
No, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm very glad the algos actually did something good.
Yeah, yeah, pleasure to have you on. So I thought it would be nice to get your take on a number of topics. I want to cover your start off with your background in SEO. And then I want to focus on the implementation struggles, which I am sure you've experienced, especially with your level experience in the industry. Want to get into SEO training. I see you work at you work at unis as well. You're a professor at university, so I'd love to ask you a couple of questions around that. Of course, Google search and AI. We have to get into that, of course, and then we'll end with the SEO community as a whole. So, if that all sounds good with you, I want to start with your background in SEO. As I like to do with all my SEO guests, I like to ask them how they got started in SEO. So, with that said, how did you become an SEO professional?
I have to say, I am not sure. I think it was by accident, like probably many people.
Hmm.
And I started off in 2002. Um, I just landed a very good role, a very good gig at the DWP, the UK Department for Work and
Uh,
Pensions,
yeah.
where they were reviewing their intranet site and they were doing reviewing a few other website products, as they called them back then.
Hmm.
So they kind of thought it would be a very good one to kind of review that project and make that site alive and kicking, and so I did, and everything started in there. I did cover everything in there, from technical aspects, most technical aspects, and also content, the way it was displayed, what it said, what it didn't say, the way it said, promotion, etc., etc. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but it did provide me with very good satisfaction, really good understanding of how things worked at a
Yeah.
very basic level. And I was so satisfied with the actual product itself, with the actual work. It just started on there, and I just couldn't stop it. Later on, I realized that part of what I was doing was called SEO. I didn't even know there were other people like me or doing the same work than me. Because
Hmm.
most of the people that I did know who were related to websites, intranet sites, extranets, as we used to call them back in the day, they
Yeah.
were mostly mathematicians, statisticians, people who did a little bit of computing work at uni, etc., but they were not writers. They were called gigs. Now we would call them gigs.
Mm.
People wouldn't just give a damn about that, to be perfectly honest. Excuse me my manners.
That's
But I
okay.
made them interested, and I really enjoyed it. So I decided to move on to that path, to follow that path, and yeah, here we are.
Mm. So why SEO specifically? You mentioned you worked in different areas as well.
Yeah.
What do you think it was about SEO that made you want to zero in on it?
Well, it's different things really. I see SEO as the basis of all online activity. Or that's the discipline that covers the basis of all online activity. This is how I have always seen it, because it's the basic. I mean, you can have good content, but you can't get it visible if the SEO part isn't there in different ways. It's technical part, but also the way you actually do the content, what kind of format, etc., etc. And that carries a responsibility, and it is very exciting. On the other hand, there are so many things to learn every day. I really enjoy that. I really enjoy that. You have to bear in mind that I used to, I did English at the uni. I majored in English with French and Dutch, and I was on my way to becoming either a translator or a teacher, and I did teaching for a few years. Also a bit of translating, localization, etc., etc. And I realized that was not exactly something that would actually bring me much joy, because I'm sure there are plenty of things to be learned. It's just that it wasn't satisfying enough. I was not learning that it was not as exciting as SEO or digital marketing is.
Interesting. So with SEO, would you say you have a specific area that you love, like content or off-page link building, perhaps, or technical, or do you like all of it as a whole?
I quite like the technical side of things, I have to say. The most basic, I think it's also the most important one. But I also recognize the need to have everything together, because sometimes you can have everything technically perfect and not getting the results you need. And I believe it is important to bear this in mind. So it's also a challenge in itself, isn't it? You kind of mix different bits all together, and to see how anything that you are doing, any projects can be profitable or can bring any kind of benefit to your business. And it's very, very interesting, and it is necessary to have everything done together. But you have to bear in mind that in some cases you will need some aspects. So, for example, content writing or content redoing or anything, or even aspects of technical schema, etc., etc. You have to bear that in mind, because every case is different. You have to take it case by case. That's part of what makes it all very, very interesting too. But everything together is what I think the way to go.
Now, with your years of experience, I'm sure you've come across one or two clients that have a big problem when it comes to implementing SEO recommendations. And I want to zero in. I want to zero in on that. What are some of the implementation struggles you've experienced with clients?
I believe that the most important ones, the biggest struggles for me, have been the fact that SEO or even marketing or digital marketing have not been recognized as something important, as an important area. Because most people would actually think that it is important, because obviously it drives business. But from my, I think, how can I say this? Marketing has traditionally been seen as those people who make things pretty, who just sit in a corner and make PDFs and things like that. SEO being part of marketing at the very beginning, it was a bit like a magic, right? Or for some people, it was even black magic for some reason. And so when the SEO industry started to develop, and also reached the point where we can definitely say, well, this is what we can bring, and this is driving business. It kind of stumbles across the same problems as marketing did, because we are not sales, so we are not handling money, so to speak, directly, but we drive business, and we make things. We steer the business, basically. We steer the environment so that we can actually bring that benefit, bring that ROI. Many people wouldn't actually understand that, and that was the biggest implementation problem that I have ever had, because it also referred to the fact that you need resources, and those resources cost money and time, and that time costs money itself as well. So if you need developer or a team of developers to implement schema or to implement redirection, just imagine a migration, a website migration, a change of platform, replatforming. Just imagine all that. You do need developers, and sometimes a team of developers, and they cost money. And because they cost money, they are normally employed in doing something totally different for a company, which is thought to be more important for any given reason. So that's the biggest one. Also, SEO has been seen as important in itself, not just as a marketing channel. But as in itself, it hasn't been really seen as important as it should be. I think it has started fairly recently to be seen as with importance it really does have. And that has been a great hindrance for me, because I would need to explain to everybody involved, not to the developers itself, and this is something I would really want to touch upon later, but people involved, or maybe project managers. They are project managers who might not even be developers by themselves. They were just kind of mingling in between different parts of the business, but they do not necessarily know any marketing or any development or anything, or any SEO for the matter. And so I would need to explain to them what exactly it is that they need to do, sometimes with great detail, almost like small kids sometimes, but they wouldn't even get it as well, because by the end of the explanation, they wouldn't still see the business reason for any implementation to happen, because it wouldn't bring money, because they wouldn't see how they could persuade other people that was actually going to be something useful for them. In other words, that I wouldn't be helping them to do their job if they were to convince others to implement SEO.
It gets it can get very political, can't it? It's an issue where an SEO spending so much time and effort trying to convince someone just to incorporate SEO into what they're doing. And what you just mentioned there is spot on. Sometimes it's developers, but a lot of the times, let's say for a technical audit, you're working with developers trying to convince them. But a lot of the times there's other people working alongside developers. And sometimes it's those people who have more say in what the developers themselves work on. So with project management, for example, project managers, it's a big issue for SEO, and SEOs have to spend so much time convincing project managers to incorporate SEO, and one, incorporate SEO, but two, incorporate SEO early. Because I know project managers all have this idea of what SEO is, and most people's idea of SEO is they bring it right before the end. Let's say a migration, they'll bring SEO right before the site launches and say SEO needs to now SEO. And of course, by then it's way too late. It's not going to work, right? And it's created an issue with implementation in that people tend to just have workarounds. Even if you have an SEO who's client side in-house, they tend to just have workarounds because that is all that they can do. They're spending most of their time trying to convince departments to work with SEOs, to work with SEO, but not really getting very far in the beginning. And it becomes a bigger problem than it needs to be. From your experience, how long would you say, just very roughly, generally, how long would you say it takes clients to implement SEO recommendations?
I have to say, I haven't had much bigger problems with that because I am a project manager myself. So I think one of the biggest points of project management is to persuade people to actually do things, to bring people in, involve them. And so it didn't take me as long as a year or 6 months or even 2 years, as I have heard sometimes that it has happened to other people. 2 years, can you imagine? You implement a schema right now within 5 minutes, and the benefits are long for the longer term. You don't need to wait so long to implement maybe just a line of code or 2 codes on everything. But it hasn't really taken me too long. But I do hear that it has been a huge struggle for other people. I think that is because I have always worked very well with developers. It is very, very important to be your friends, for them to be your friends and for you to be friends with them, because our jobs kind of intersect in so many points.
Yes.
The overlapping is actually quite big. So it is important that we all recognize that. Now, developers do not have to know SEO at all. It's just not what they are qualified to do. But it is great that many people, many developers, even more developers these days, do know some basic SEO, or at least understands the importance of the technical aspects, those technical aspects, and to be implemented correctly. And it's great to work in that environment. And so the more friends we are, the more friendly you are with them, the more clearly you explain your goals to them and understand that they also have their own goals to achieve, the shorter that implementation time becomes. The thing is it's not just implementation, it's also the time that comes after the implementation, because you need to understand that everybody needs to understand that once something comes implemented, you need to monitor over time. Just so you actually check that the implementation is actually correct. Because what if you are implementing product schema and that implementation isn't correct, or it is correct from a development point of view, but not from an SEO point of view, not from a marketing perspective, and therefore is not bringing the benefit. Perhaps product schema is not the best example of that, but things do change over time. And it is important to be on top of things. So that's the reason why. Clear communication, a bit of education, internal education as to what your processes are, and understanding your own understanding what their processes are is actually key to getting things done.
So let's say with a developer, what is your typical approach to working with a developer? Let's say you have a tech audit completed, and you now need to incorporate developers with it. So you've submitted the tech audit, you delivered the tech audit. What's your process from that point on?
Before the tech audit has been completed or even started, I normally try to understand who is in charge, who is going to do what exactly, and see whether I can get introduced or as a consultant or even working in-house as an employee, because I used to work as an employee until fairly recently. You have to make friends within that company and understand what they are doing and who can be useful to your end as well, on how you can be useful to their own end as well. So I get to know people in the first place, then I do my work. And after that, I kind of follow up the process, because I try to make them see what I'm trying to do and the fact that they need to implement those changes. So I speak to their boss, the person who's in charge of the development department. And try to understand what exactly it is that they need to do and how they can fit anything that I am doing into their own schedule. So, for example, if I've got, I have recently completed another tech audit, and there is a huge list of technical issues that needs to be fixed or implemented or even enhanced. And so what I need is, what I have done is prioritizing them from an individual point of view, but also from areas. So some areas, performance, for example, will actually have much bigger impact than any other area. So, for example, just to say, just for the sake of argument, content. So I meet up with them. I explain what I have done, why I have done it again, and what is the benefit that is going to be bringing to the business, so that they understand that I am not doing this because I like to do it, which I do, but that is different. And I try to see what exactly it is that they can do for me. Sometimes what I find is that they may know of those issues before. So if they do, then part of my job is done. So it's interesting because they say, oh, yeah, we know about these headers that are not correctly. Something is wrong here, etc., etc. That's great. There's something from a security aspect, which is one of my first bits, the most important bits. That is done. But then I try to make them see what's the best way to go about everything else as well. And then I simply follow up with them. I use a tracker, some kind of tracker. There are different ways of tracker. Anything from an Excel spreadsheet, just a simple one, like a list, just to see what is the completion, the progress of that task. Or anything on Asana, or even Slack. Some people use Slack quite a lot for that. Whatever it is that fits the bill, really. It doesn't really matter. But it's important to follow it through, because if something doesn't get done, or it's getting done and suddenly there is an urgency, whatever it is that was being done before needs to be completed as soon as possible. But you need to know exactly what is happening there.
Yeah. Do you find that you work better with developers when you're prescriptive with what needs to be done? Or do you find that developers prefer for you to state what needs to be done and for them to decide how they go about and fix the issue, or a balance of the two?
It's more a balance of the two, I think, because one of the most important points when talking to other professionals is allowing them to do their job. to the job they are qualified to do, and which have been hard to do, and which you are not. So I am prescriptive up to a point. So if I need schema, just to continue with this example, if I need the schema, product schema or any other type of schema implemented, I say to them, I need schema implemented. But then if I find some, say, security issues, I am not a developer. So I can tell you from experience that some things actually do break other stuff. And so things like hreflang are just not being read properly. So I can actually, from experience, explain to them why I think this needs to be done now or be looked at now. But it is up to them to decide the priority in which and the order in which those elements are going to be implemented, are going to be even looked at, because maybe I see something as a problem and they don't see it is a problem. Maybe it can be something else. Maybe it can be something that can be done alongside something else that they are doing, which is not as resource intensive. It's up to them to think about all that. I can't really be prescriptive with another professional, because think about it. Would you like someone who has no idea about SEO coming to you to say, I don't like how you have written this meta description or this title? Because they always come to you and say, I don't like it. And it's like, why? Why wouldn't you like it? I mean, this is not like a TV series or a pair of shoes or something like that. It's not something to be liked or not. It's something to be appropriate or not. But it is you who has to do it, not themselves. So this is the way with developers.
Yeah, I find that us as SEOs, we can sometimes be too prescriptive to the point where we're almost doing the person's job, or we think we can do the person's job, and that usually robs them the wrong way. We had this issue, and I'm sure you can relate to this, where a long time ago SEOs were very much we were seen as content people as well. So if you needed something written, you would get it written by an SEO writer or an SEO copywriter, and that term itself is nonsensical. But that's another topic. But it's something that SEOs were spending a lot of their time writing content, and that really robbed content copywriters the wrong way, because it was just seen as like trumping on their work. And SEOs and copywriters, I remember in the very beginning we had almost like a barrier between the two disciplines, and I think it was because of that, because SEOs were trying to be copywriters. And I find we have a similar issue with SEOs and developers as well, in that we sometimes look at an issue from their point of view and think we know how to fix the issue ourselves, and that leads into a whole different set of problems from a communication and building friendship, liaison point of view. What's your take on that?
Don't tell another colleague what to do. This is what I say. You can actually explain how you have come across this, or how you think this can be useful to do, and why, but you have to let them go away and think about it. It's very, very interesting, because some developers' friends, as in real friends rather than people I have worked with, have said to me that they are not happy with the fact that somebody might actually come along and tell them how to do their job, because maybe they do have the points in that they are right. Maybe they're right. But then if they are right, it means that they are doing their own job. They don't want anybody else who is not a developer or who's not working on that department, say, to do their own job, because that would mean less opportunities to continue their contracts or to find work for them. So there has to be some kind of barrier, because you don't want anybody who's not an SEO to write your specifications or even your content for you. So this is the same with developers. And about your earlier point about the copywriters, I do agree. At the very beginning, I think we were hired to do a little bit of everything. Just like I have seen in certain job ads where a receptionist might pick up the phone, might do interviewing, might actually do the coffee, might do social media. There was a whole list. It's like, I mean, they need an orchestra for this. Somebody posted it on social media some time ago, just as an example of things that just cannot happen. And so this is, I think, what happens with many SEOs. So if you knew how to write, or even if you didn't, you were hired to maybe do a little bit of the technical stuff. But it was mostly about writing. And so the people who did know how to write, but who didn't have any idea at all about SEO in general, would actually feel slightly aside, which is understandable. And I never meant to actually do anybody's job. There are people, I mean, I've been told I write quite well, which is so good to hear, but I'm not a copywriter. I'm not a writer. I would very much prefer people who actually do know how to write and who are trained properly to actually do that job. Obviously, you sit down with them and say, well, this is exactly what needs to happen. This is the end goal. But then within that, again, just like with developers, just let them do their own job. There's no point in not being nice to them.
Completely agree. I find that you'll get ahead a lot quicker that way. I think the mistake SEOs make is thinking they know it all or they have to do it all. And I have a theory, especially when it comes to technical, right? Because I think it comes from client side or in-house SEOs looking towards SEOs at agency, because I think overall as an industry, SEOs agency side tend to lead the industry. So I think a client-side SEO would look at an agency SEO and look at the work that they have carried out and say, oh, they are very detailed in what they've provided, and think that is the best way to approach things. But it's a different way of optimization. An SEO who's agency side, they have to be prescriptive, especially if their title is technical SEO. They have to delve into issues. They have to be very detailed, but it doesn't mean all of that information is passed on to a developer and say, okay, this is exactly what you need to do, because it will rub them the wrong way. And I think that's where having that set of soft skills comes into place with SEOs, and I think that is an area that we lack in a major way. We're way too focused on hard skills. How are we doing for time? Okay, we're good for time. I see you're professor at a university. How do you find SEOs? How do you find people's interest in SEO? Has that risen over the years or over the months?
Well, I have just started, to be honest. I'm just collaborating with a university here in Spain. I find it very enriching, but I also find it rather tough, because although they find it interesting, they might like to hear about SEO, the sheer complexity of the matter is just too much for them. It is overwhelming.
Yeah.
So I find that technically minded people tend to be more into it. More than creative people, although creativity is necessary at all times. I think creatives tend to focus more on writing, perhaps, or any other areas, rather than the technical side of things, and that has been a barrier. Get them interested. So I have needed to go back to maybe the start of time. So with what is the internet exactly? Because they wouldn't even understand what the internet is, because no one had ever explained to them what it is. They might have even, I don't know, just being born into this time when there were so many mobile phones around, computers, and even SEOs working, etc., etc. But then nobody had explained to them what the basics are, and so if they don't have the basics, they cannot understand what it is, what is a search engine, etc., etc. And those bits and pieces were interesting to them, more the historical part of it. But then when it comes to accessibility issues, performance, etc., they tend to get lost. So you have to be very careful there. What I tend to do is to break down the information in the smallest chunks of information that I can, and then try to unify everything, put everything together to explain the whole context, how everything kind of fits together. And that works. Still, if you are not interested, you're not interested. If you don't want to be educated, you're not going to be educated. And that works for executives as well. When you try to be nice as well and make your life and their lives easy and explain what SEO is, why digital marketing before, why is it that we have to do digital marketing and how it affects the whole marketing strategy, and then within that SEO, when you try to explain that, you have to kind of I had to break all the information into the smallest possible chunks as well.
So let's say an SEO who's in-house, right? They are aware that every department, including senior members of the business, require a certain level of SEO training, and not training to do SEO, but training in terms of being aware of SEO, right? So that, let's say for business leadership, the more they are aware of SEO to a certain level, the more they can make decisions that will impact the website's performance in search, right? So how would you suggest to an in-house SEO that evangelizing SEO is something that they should intake?
In an ideal world, and I say ideal world because every single role and at every single company is different. It really is very different. You can do, you don't have to change the world, but even from a much junior position, you can actually start finding allies, no? Which is what I was talking about earlier when you have to, when I was talking about making friends within the company, just finding allies, people who can be useful to you or you useful to them in a special way. So, I think in an ideal world, I would set up some kind of learning presentations. There's something like lunch and learn presentations, for example. Maybe just 10 minutes. You don't have to go any further than that because people will not be interested. It's like the university students. University students need to set their presentations because they have to do an exam afterwards. And because they have to attend other lessons, other subjects that are related, but they are not exactly like that. And they have to know about it. But with executives, it's rather different. So I always try and steal some 10 minutes from their time just to make them understand what exactly it is that I'm doing and how it fits into the strategy and how it's going to drive business, even if it is indirectly, like not like sales or PPC even, etc., etc. And that is, I think, a very good way. But it's about finding allies, getting people on your side, your boss in the first place included, because being a junior to them means that you have less visibility and they might actually see a way out that you don't see. Yeah, or they may know other people within the company that you don't know anything about and who might be able to help. But then it's also about results. I think our psychology is geared towards achieving something. So you can show what you have been achieving over the past, say, 6 months since you started working on X, Y, Z, and see how it works. Although I have to tell you that it just doesn't really work only with executives, but it also works with other teams. Within a company. And some of those teams might not be like executives, but they do have a huge power in the company. Yeah. So I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I was working with an organization, a well-known organization in the UK. And I was not surprised to find out that the people who worked in the, I think it was called communications. So it would be the equivalent to internal communications, PR, etc., etc. That department had a huge amount of power, unnecessary power, even more than marketing. They wouldn't even consider data, and they have huge amount of people working on data or e-commerce, but they were super powerful. So I was brought in to do this Christmas campaign for an e-commerce brand. And I find out that everything was in tatters in there. So it's not because they didn't have people who actually knew how to do their job and they were doing it really, really well. But in that side of the business, everything was not really as good as it should be. And partly is because of, the lack of all these political loops, so to speak. So what I did, amongst many other things, is showing these people how I did two things. One, I sat with them and I told them what exactly it is that I was looking for, say in email marketing, which I was doing with them as well, how an email could actually, written in a specific way, could actually make things better and do the trick. For PPC as well, because I was also managing PPC too, apart from SEO, or even the website, which they considered like a black box, literally. That was the actual name that they gave it, because it was so difficult and it was so tangled. I had never seen a website like that in my whole life, and there was no documentation whatsoever. So I basically said to them, well, I ran a small audit and I said, this is what I can do because I have seen it before. They said to me, don't do that because you're going to break it anymore. And it's like, no, it's not going to break at all. So I involved all the departments, including the biggest one, in trying to see how I was going to be doing this. And what the results might likely be. And at the end of the campaign, when I actually exceeded the very strict objective that I had, I brought them together and I showed them basically what I had done with their help. With writing to a website, with using the right keywords, using the right categories, the internal linking as well, which was rather difficult to actually get done because of the lack of documentation, but we actually got around it. And then with the other marketing channels that I was managing, to the email, for example, the PPC, because they even wanted a hand into the PPC as well. Writing the actual text, which was rather interesting. So I let them do one of the adverts, just so they actually got a hang of it. And it's just a very small advert, which in the end we didn't actually put out. But everybody was actually quite happy and quite pleased with that. And it kind of opened more ways of communicating with them and with the rest of the team.
Yeah. It's funny how in the beginning it's very stressful, hectic, but once you get results and you can show them, and I think it's two things that you mentioned, showing them the results and also showing them the journey. Because when you do those two things, they become more willing to be a participant in the journey. They are more willing to go on the journey with you. And what you mentioned earlier is that it's a piece of work. SEO is something that is an ongoing piece of work. You're never going to reach a period where SEO is complete. You no longer need to do SEO. Having awareness of SEO is an ongoing thing. It's continually evangelizing SEO within the business. Even if it's 10 minutes at a time, you just got to keep that up. Otherwise, you'll get into an issue where you lose traffic, and now SEO is to blame for it, which is, as we know, not the case. Now,
that's right.
I've got to move on to Google search and AI, because I think this is such a important topic that I want to ensure that we cover it. Now, Google, of course, they have their events coming up imminently, where they talk about AI. How do you reckon they'll respond to AI chatbots?
Well, it's difficult to know, right? What I think many people does think is that they are going to be presenting with a tool to generate content, which is what Chat GPT 3 is really. Generation content generation tool. And the thing is, I don't really think that is the case, because that is not Google's business, really. That's not how. That's not what they are doing. That's not what they do for a living, so to speak. Yeah, I think it's more something. It's going to be something more interactive, something that allows them to kind of expand the functionalities of the UI, perhaps, but definitely not a content generation tool, which is good, actually.
How do you think?
Just think about those.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just think about all those copywriters that we were talking about earlier, who were complaining that we SEOs were taking up their jobs, etc., etc. Now is Google taking up their jobs? No way.
Yeah. Imagine. It's going to be a very interesting couple of months, and even couple of 2-3 years. I think it's the way the industry is headed, the search industry is headed, is going to change the way that is going to change what people, searchers, expect from tools. how do you think it will change the way users interact with either Google or perhaps a different search engine?
Well, first of all, we will have to see what functionality is in the first place. But Google is highly interested in presenting users with the best answer possible. So anything that allows them to show that as quickly as possible is going to be good for them, because it's going to be useful for all users who are going to still be preferring Google to Bing or you.com or etc., all these new search engines. So it's going to be a really, really interesting time until we actually get used to working with tools like ChatGPT or any other, to be honest. At the moment, we are all looking at the best way to make their job easier, work quicker. And I'm not sure how Google is going to respond, but I'm looking forward to this Wednesday's event.
I'm going to be tuned in, just like watching it live, because I'm very curious to see what they do, and I think it will be telling on how they want to shape search from the event on Wednesday. So very, very excited about it. SEO community.
I take it that entities is going to be so important. I'm sorry, interrupted.
No. Go ahead. In what way?
I think there has been an evolution in which now they are looking more and more into how concepts are related. And so this is the way Google bots, the bots are actually crawling websites and trying to understand websites as well. So I take it that these new functionalities are going to be using that, right? Or facilitating that somehow. Do you think?
I do. I also think, see, this is why I think my interest in it is the way it's going to shape user behavior. Because my focus on my interest in it is what are users going to expect from search? Are they going to be more keen on, let's say, what we consider brand related searches, or will they still be focused on generic based searches? Because my thinking behind this, the reason I'm pondering this, is because searchers these days are a lot more savvy on how to use search than they were 10, 15 years ago, right? And I'm curious to know, will their search behavior be geared towards searching for stuff that they already have a basic awareness of, i.e., instead of them searching for, let's say, let me use a very basic example, mobile phones. They already know what type of mobile phone they want, so they'll just search for Samsung mobile phone or Nexus 7 or 8 mobile phone, Google's mobile phone. So will that change their behavior? And if that changes their behavior, it's of course going to impact us, right? So will we be more focused on brand related searches? Because my theory behind all of this AI tools or chat boxes is that it's going to lead users to be more focused on brand related terms, and that in itself will lead SEOs to be more keen on ensuring that they have their market share for the brands that they are working on. So more focus on brand related keywords, less so on generic keywords. That's my thinking behind it. But Yeah, we'll see, especially from Wednesday once the event is launched. Now, getting into the SEO community, in your experience, what would you say frustrates clients about SEO?
Probably the fact that it is not the quickest way to get them money, return of investment. And
Right.
that unfortunately is the case. This is how it works because it's in the nature of SEO. This is not PPC. This is not sales. We just work on the longer run. I think this is probably the biggest one, but also what I have found very interesting over the years is the fact that people who or executives who might be interested but who may not know enough about the industry or about SEO is the fact that they kind of think, or let me put this in another way, they may be attracted at something that they might find shiny, like a shiny object. Oh, that is cool, SEO, website, etc., etc. These are those people who used to say, I am very switched on. And then they wouldn't be. That's a phrase I used to find very, very often with these executives. And then they approach things, or somebody would actually come to them, or they would talk to me, and I would basically point out at the complexity of the actual SEO. It's not a bunch of tactics. It's actually a strategy. Another channel with a strategy and with tactics underneath that you need to implement and be flexible to modify, etc., etc. And it is so complex and it's so big as well, because we were talking about technical SEO earlier, schema, security. That's not SEO exactly, but it affects. But we also have content. We've got so many different areas within SEO. And it used to be a lot easier before because many people would actually be focused on either content or technical, and then we would actually make sure that we would be versed on all of the others, because there were so many complex things to do, and as the SEO industry was, let's say, advancing and progressing, it would actually become more and more technical and also more and more complex. So they see something they wouldn't expect, and they still don't expect, as I was talking to someone the other day, and they think, oh wow, this is this got really difficult. It's not like not difficult, but it certainly is rather complex. And we have to act on that. I think those are the two biggest struggles that I have had.
Yeah, it's an interesting one where things have become more and more complex. But if you have someone who thinks they know SEO because they, let's say, did a module or so 5 or so years ago, it's outdated information, and them being switched on is not going to cut it these days.
No. Well, the very basics are still there, right? I am not doing
fundamentals.
anything. Well, I am doing a few things that are different, but many of the things that I keep on doing are still the same ones I did 5 years ago or even before. It's just that maybe I am placing more weight on some other things than previously, or maybe I'm including other concepts or other tactics as well. But the basics are still there. And the thing is that if you have studied SEO 5 years ago, your information is totally outdated. Because those bits and pieces that I keep talking about, that I am placing more weight on these days, were not there. We're not in the subjects, amongst the subjects that they were studying.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Exactly. Now, we're still in the first quarter of 2023. What are you looking forward to this year?
I am looking forward to seeing how machine learning, AI can actually help me doing my job. I'm really, really excited. I am as attracted to shiny objects as everyone else, but I really, really want to see. I really want to see what exactly it is that I can do and how it can bring me and the companies I work with benefit. That's one thing I'm looking forward to. I am also looking forward to growing as a professional as well. I think I don't consider a year a success if I haven't grown in a way. Yeah, if I haven't learned, if I haven't advanced, and that's what I am looking to do. So I'm looking to take on some courses, but I'm also looking to get the practical experience to kind of apply that. And I think some of these courses and these things that I would really want to focus on is more on the management side of things. I would really like to keep on, because I used to be a manager before I was a consultant, and I'd really like to continue expanding all those software skills because while I grow as a professional from my technical point of view, I would like to also be knowledgeable about how others can actually understand and what I'm doing and why it is that I am doing it, how it can bring us benefit, etc., etc. I think that's to be democratizing, right? Getting people to know, understand that is not something that an elite can do, which is something I have heard before, an elite, or a bunch of geeks or nerds, etc., etc. No, this is something that it is in here, that is mainstream, that is going to, and is actually bringing benefit. And I would like to expand on those ways to making people clear and about this.
Brilliant. Monse, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you online?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn and also on Twitter while it stands still. If you've ever still does. I'm Montserrat Cano in there. And I've got an upcoming website, Montserrat-Cano.com, which is upcoming. And, well, I will be having some interviews as well and some blog posts written, and hopefully people find them interesting.
Awesome. I will have those links in the description, Twitter and LinkedIn for you.